I used to think I was the luckiest man alive. My wife, Emma, was everything I had ever wanted in a partner. Smart, ambitious, confident, and radiant in every possible way. We met in college, two broke dreamers with nothing but late-night coffees and shared visions of a better future. I worked in construction management back then, while Emma studied marketing. She had this natural charm, the kind that made people stop mid-conversation just to listen when she spoke. I loved that about her. She wasn't just beautiful, she was magnetic. After graduation, we got married. Our life wasn't glamorous, but it was real. We rented a small apartment, cooked together every night, and laughed through the chaos of paying bills and chasing promotions. But success came faster for Emma than it did for me. She landed a job at a major corporate firm, Hawthorne and Tate Global. At first, she was just an assistant, but within a year, she became a marketing coordinator, then project lead, and within 3 years, she was being considered for management. I was proud of her, truly, until pride slowly turned into something else, suspicion. It started small. She began coming home later than usual. First 10 minutes, then an hour, then sometimes she wouldn't show up until almost midnight. Client meetings, she'd say. Networking dinners, she'd add with a tired smile, brushing off the lipstick smudge on her wine glass. At first, I believed her. She'd always been hardworking, the kind of woman who didn't quit until she got what she wanted. But something about her tone started to change. She used to text me all the time. Little things like, "Just had the worst coffee ever," or "Can't wait to get home to you." Those messages stopped. Now when I texted her, she'd reply hours later with, "Busy, I'll call you later." But later never came. One Friday night, she told me there was a company celebration, a private dinner for the top executives and high performers. "I can't miss it, Jake," she said, adjusting her silver earrings in the mirror. She looked stunning, the kind of stunning that made me feel invisible. Her black dress fit perfectly, her hair curled delicately, her perfume lingering in the air long after she left. I tried not to think too much of it. I wanted to trust her. I needed to. But when midnight came and went, and she still wasn't home, that quiet seed of doubt began to sprout. The next morning, she came back around 7:30 a.m. Her makeup was faded, her eyes tired, and she looked startled when she saw me sitting on the couch. "Jake, you're up," she said, voice trembling slightly. "I couldn't sleep," I replied, watching her take off her heels slowly. "How was the party?" "It was fine," she muttered. "Just long. You know how these things go." I nodded, but my eyes landed on a faint red mark on her collarbone, something that wasn't there before. She noticed my gaze and quickly pulled her hair forward. "I'm going to shower," she said abruptly, disappearing into the bathroom before I could say another word. That was the first time I knew something was wrong. The following weeks were a blur of tension. Emma seemed distant, not just physically, but emotionally. She started locking her phone, hiding notifications, and taking calls outside on the balcony. Whenever I'd ask who it was, she'd say, "Just work stuff, Jake, you wouldn't understand." But I understood enough to know that work stuff doesn't make you smile like that. One afternoon, I had decided to surprise her. She'd mentioned a presentation at her office, a big one. I took the day off, stopped by a bakery, and bought her favorite strawberry cheesecake. I wanted to show up, support her, maybe take her to lunch afterward. But when I arrived at the office building, her coworker at the front desk looked confused. "Emma? She's not here today," the receptionist said, flipping through her schedule. "Not here?" I repeated, frowning. "She told me she had a big meeting." The woman shrugged. "She's on a business lunch downtown. Mr. Hawthorne asked her to accompany him. They left around 11. Mr. Hawthorne. The Hawthorne from Hawthorne and Tate Global, the CEO. I drove to the restaurant district, searching almost frantically, until I finally spotted her car, parked outside a high-end place I'd never been able to afford. Through the glass, I saw them. Emma and Mr. Hawthorne sat close together in a dimly lit corner booth. They weren't just having lunch. They were leaning in close, laughing, and at one point, his hand brushed against hers. I felt something sharp pierce through me, like betrayal had a physical form. I stood there frozen, cheesecake box in hand, watching my wife flirt with her boss as if our marriage meant nothing. That night, I didn't confront her. Not yet. She came home smiling, humming as if nothing had happened. Guess what? I got invited to the company retreat next weekend. Only top performers get to go. Isn't that amazing? I forced a smile. Yeah, amazing. She kissed my cheek and walked away, completely unaware that I already knew. For the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every detail replayed in my mind. The way he looked at her, the way she smiled, how comfortable they seemed together. I even tried to convince myself that maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe I was overreacting. But then on Thursday night, she left her phone charging in the kitchen. And when a message popped up, I couldn't stop myself. It was from NH, Mr. Hawthorne. Can't stop thinking about last night. You looked incredible. My stomach turned. Seconds later, another message appeared. Next weekend can't come soon enough. I've already booked our suite. Sweet. That was it. The truth hit me like a brick wall. My wife wasn't just having dinner with her boss. She was sleeping with him. And she wasn't just cheating on me. She was using that affair to climb higher at work. Every promotion, every late meeting, every overnight trip. It was all built on lies. I didn't confront her right away. I wanted to be sure. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed her. That Saturday morning, she told me she was heading to the company retreat at a private resort outside the city. I waited 15 minutes after she left, then got in my car and drove after her. The place was fancy. Luxury cars, champagne, corporate banners, everything. But as I parked far enough away not to be noticed, I spotted her immediately. She was wearing a red dress, one I'd never seen before, laughing as Nathan held her hand, guiding her toward the resort entrance. Then he kissed her. Not a friendly peck, not a drunk mistake, a kiss that spoke of something deeply familiar. I stayed frozen, the world spinning around me. That was the moment my marriage ended, even if she didn't know it yet. I didn't stay long. I couldn't. I drove back home, numb, tears blurring the highway lights. When she returned 2 days later, she was glowing, full of stories about team-building exercises and network dinners. I just nodded, pretending to listen, because I already knew what really happened at that retreat. But I also knew something else. I wasn't going to confront her in anger. No. I was going to make sure she paid the real price for what she'd done, in a way she'd never see coming. I spent the next week acting the part of the stunned husband while my mind worked like a machine. I showed up at work, pretended to focus on deadlines, nodded at clients, and smiled when colleagues joked about the weekend. At home, I made coffee, did the dishes, and moved through our shared life with a kind of calm that felt almost foreign. Inside, I mapped everything I knew. Dates, messages, times when she'd said she was at the office but wasn't. I made a list of witnesses. The concierge who had seen them leave the resort together, the bar manager who remembered their private table, the colleague who'd once joked about Emma's sudden glow after a business lunch. I hired a private investigator. It felt dramatic, but this was not drama. It was repair. I needed facts. I gave him some basic parameters: follow her corporate calendar, check hotel logs, look for credit card charges that didn't match business expenses. He was discreet and efficient, and within days he began sending me notes. 2 nights at St. Verity Resort, with times and room numbers. Dinner reservation under Nathan Hawthorne's name. Another came with a PDF, a Lux Hotel folio, showing a duo checked in at 11:45 p.m., checked out at 9 a.m., with his company credit card on the bill. The evidence came like a slow, precise drop of water that hollowed out the rock of denial. All of this hardened my resolve. I wanted two things: the truth recognized publicly by people who mattered to her, colleagues, friends, the social circle that had cheered her rise, and legal protection for myself. I was careful not to be petty. I wanted justice, not spectacle. The next move had to be clean. I called the one person I knew could flip a room in our industry, a reporter I'd worked with in a small project years ago. He was hungry for stories about corporate misconduct. I didn't give him everything, not yet. I simply asked if he'd heard rumblings about impropriety at Hawthorne and Tate. He said he had, and asked if I could provide corroboration. I told him I could. He told me to be careful. Meanwhile, I contacted my lawyer and set up a meeting. We went through finances, the house deed, the accounts. I was careful, calm, methodical. My lawyer, a pragmatic woman, drew up a list of immediate actions: freeze joint credit cards, set up a temporary separation agreement for the child's custody arrangements, and document all evidence of infidelity, especially where company resources were used for personal benefit. She looked at me over her glasses and said, "This will be messy, but you're doing the right thing. Documenting everything is the most powerful defense you have." Armed with legal counsel and a growing dossier, I picked the precise moment to act. It would be neither the first drunken night nor an explosive confrontation in public. It would be a board meeting, and it would be public enough that the ripple could not be contained in whispers. Emma loved those board dinners. They were part theater, part power choreography. Expensive cigars, clinking crystal, and the mid-level executives who practiced charisma until it felt real. Nathan Hawthorne loved them more. He thrived in rooms where influence was performative. He would be present at the next investor showcase, and Emma, by then riding the wave of her promotion, would be on the team presenting a new campaign. I scheduled the reporter to come to that event as a social guest. My PI confirmed that Nathan would be staying at the same hotel that night. He always did when investors came to town. The night of the showcase arrived with a humidity that made collars stick. Emma looked breathtaking in a tailored navy suit. She walked into the room with the easy confidence of a woman who'd spent months building an invincible persona. Nathan took his seat near the head table, and I took mine in the back, the reporter to my left, and my lawyer quietly beside us. Emma did what she did best. She presented with charm, intelligence, and razor-sharp slides that cut through the noise. People applauded. Nathan smiled, his expression somewhere between pride and possessiveness. After the presentation, the formalities dissolved into small cliques and laughs. Nathan drifted toward her, a slow trajectory that said what their elevators and late dinners had already whispered. I let them talk for a while, recording the scene with my phone. My palms were steady. My mouth didn't shake. I wanted this to be clean, undeniable, and final. When Nathan moved away to talk to another investor, I stood. The reporter stood too. I walked to Emma as if I were going to congratulate her publicly on a job well done. People turned their heads. Glasses paused mid-air. On the small stage where the after-dinner speeches were being given, I took the microphone. "Thank you all for an incredible evening," I said, my voice projected enough to carry. "There's something I'd like to say." The room simmered with expectation. I was careful with my tone, calm like someone recounting a fact. I played 2 audio clips. One was a voicemail Emma had left on my phone by mistake, a short breathy note meant for someone else, calling him by a secret name.
The second was a recording of Nathan and Emma laughing after an investor call, their voices intimate, the kind of casual intimacy that implies more than project strategy. The reporter's cameraman, standing at the back as my ally, turned on his phone and began to live stream it. In a matter of seconds, the room that had offered applause instead offered silence. Faces went ashen. Glasses were set down. Emma's smile dropped away like a mask falling from a face. Nathan's jaw tightened. He looked like a man who had just realized his empire had a glass ceiling. And then I spoke, not with accusation, but with simple, clean sentences. I explained the timeline, the hotel folios, the dinner reservations, and the hotel checks that matched nights when Emma had claimed to be on company tasks. I showed the invoice with Nathan's card on it. I explained that we had evidence that company resources were being misapplied for personal relations. It was legal language, clear as a contract.
People gawked. Colleagues who had toasted Emma's promotion now lowered their eyes. An investor muttered to the person beside him and walked away. A woman from HR stood abruptly, phone in hand, and called the general counsel. I could sense the slow collapse of something that had felt immovable. Nathan stormed toward me then, a dark figure of indignation, but the general counsel beat him to it. He was escorted out by security, and soon after the board arranged an emergency meeting. The reporter had already posted a short, factual piece on the platform, questions raised about executive conduct at Hawthorne and Tate. It wasn't sensational. It was plain, sober, and lethal. The following morning, the headlines were calmer but merciless. Corporate scandal at Hawthorne and Tate, CEO suspended pending investigation. Emma's name was linked, and the elegant narrative she had built unraveled in plain sight. I wasn't proud of the spectacle. There is a cruelty to public exposure that discomforts even those seeking justice. But I had weighed the alternatives. Quiet separation had left me with no remedy. The board would have covered up impropriety and sunk both our lives in silence. The legal team would have let Nathan use his clout to protect himself. Public light was the only place where fairness might find a foothold. Emma called me the next day. Her voice was small, the elements of her persona stripped away. "Why?" she asked in a whisper that still fills my ears. "Why did you do this?" I didn't answer at first. I had rehearsed words, but none felt right when it came down to the person who'd once stood beside me at our wedding. Because I needed to stop being invisible to myself. I needed the truth to be recognized outside our apartment. I needed the lie broken. She cried then, a guttural sound that was part grief, part the realization of everything she had lost. But I couldn't give back what she had exchanged. The easy dinners, the late texts, the promise of staying home with her family, she had traded those for nights in a suite and the warmth of a man who already had everything she wanted. The board's investigation was swift. Nathan's suspension turned into an inquiry that revealed more improprieties. Gifts, expenses coded as client development, a pattern of favoring certain accounts tied to his circle. The company froze actions pending the outcome. Nathan's career imploded. Investors fled. Emma's role at the company evaporated as HR conducted its review. Friends who had toasted her success stopped answering texts. Her promotions were rescinded. The trust she had cultivated dissolved like sugar in rain. The legal process with me was meticulous. I didn't attack her emotionally in front of the child. I didn't speak in hatred. We arranged separation agreements that protected the child's welfare and ensured that the home would be stable for weekday custody. I wanted the child's world to be firm. I wanted him to see that adults could act with dignity amid chaos. Over the next months, Emma moved out. She found a small apartment a few blocks away, and for a while, my life felt like an empty theater where props had been rearranged. The house was quiet. I painted one of the spare rooms and set up a small office where the echoes of her laughter used to be. I started going to therapy consistently. I joined a weekend basketball game with a crew of guys from the office, a small, solid anchor of ordinary life. It helped. It didn't heal everything, but it steadied me.
As time passed, the anger I had carried softened into something else, a clarity that allowed me to make choices for my future not dictated by past betrayal. I dated a little, awkwardly and cautiously. I slept without the cold knot in my chest that had occupied so many nights after the discovery. At work, I threw myself into a renovation project that became a kind of meditation. Drawings, materials, the slow satisfaction of structure rising from empty ground. Emma resurfaced in the occasional text at first, apologies, confessions, short pleas about what she missed. I read them, saved none, replied seldom. She tried to make gestures, a bouquet, a letter, a promise to go to therapy. I accepted none of it publicly. Privately, I was pragmatic. People change when accountability is measured, not when phrases are uttered in panic. Nathan's downfall did not feel like triumph. Watching someone's career crumble because of someone else's choices felt hollow. He was not the villain I'd invented. He was a man greedy for power and blind to the wreckage his choices could cause. He retreated into silence, taking a low-profile role in a smaller firm before exiting the industry entirely. Men like him find ways to survive. They often do so because the world is crowded with second chances. The point was not to punish him for the sensation of betrayal I felt. It was to make the truth visible, so that decisions could be re-examined through honest light. A year after everything, we sat in mediation for the last time. Papers were signed. The house was sold. The child would live primarily with me during the week. Weekends with Emma were structured and monitored. We spoke only the necessary words, practical and efficient, which was how I preferred it. That quiet efficiency kept things from becoming vicious and allowed the child to slip between two homes without seeing the adults collapse into mud.
Months turned into a new kind of normal. I still carried the scar of what had happened, but scars have a property beyond pain. They are proof of survival. I walked differently, perhaps more carefully, but also more self-aware. My relationships with friends deepened, not because I needed to talk about what happened, but because I had learned to listen in a new way, to become present in a way I hadn't been before. Eva tried to rebuild her life as well. She took a lower-profile job at a boutique agency where she worked long, silent hours. I heard she dated, tried to move forward. The child's eyes lit when he described simple things from his time with her, a new pancake recipe she'd learned, a silly game they played on the floor. Those small pieces of ordinary joy were not mine to squander. There is a lesson here that took me longer than it should have to accept. People are imperfect, and betrayal does not always come from a place of gross malice. Sometimes it's weakness, sometimes it's ambition, sometimes it's a lapse of character in the face of temptation. But while motives may vary, consequences are steady. They exist. If someone asks me if I regret exposing them, if I would do it differently, I would answer honestly. I don't know. There were nights I wished for a quieter solution, for an honest conversation that might have saved what we had. But I also know that when secrets accumulate like debts, the only solvent is truth. I chose to make that truth visible so it could be addressed, not whispered about in boardrooms and behind closed doors forever. In the end, what I sought wasn't revenge, it was restoration. I wanted the child's world to be stable. I wanted my financial picture to be secure. And I wanted the lies to stop dictating my life. I wanted a future that wasn't built on illusions. I got that, but it came at a price. Love, once fragile and beautiful, had been carefully dismantled. The pieces were still distinct, and I carried them forward as lessons rather than weapons. Sometimes on quiet nights, I stand by the window holding a cup of coffee and think about the man I was at the beginning of it all. Eager, trusting, a bit naive. I am not that man anymore. I am someone who knows the value of boundaries and the cost of secrets. I am someone who chose clarity over chaos, truth over convenience, and the future over the comfort of a lie. That's the last and simplest thing I learned. Life's true currency is trust. When it's spent recklessly, the debt is owed to everyone you loved. And when you reclaim your ledger, you learn how to invest more wisely.